Can you actually heal from trauma without going to therapy? I'm gonna answer this question in this video, so you guys stick around and we're gonna talk about it right now. There's always this question of, can you heal from trauma without going to therapy? Can you actually get through symptoms of traumatic events without going to therapy? Can you heal from trauma without going to therapy? Now, in my expert opinion, I feel as if this question comes from a lack of actually understanding what therapy is for, and then also too understanding what trauma is. So I'm gonna break down those two, and then I'm gonna give you guys what my response is. Now, therapy is a space where you can actually process your trauma and actually process the things that you actually went through. And going to therapy is, sometimes intimidating and it's a lot to consider, but it's designed to be a safe space for you to actually process your trauma. I know there's a lot of people that go to life coaches and things of that nature, and people that say they're counselors, but you don't want to go to people like that. You want to go to somebody that is professionally trained, that's either licensed or possibly working on their licensure and registered with the state that they practice in, to actually get the help that you deserve. I've heard a lot of horror stories where people have these traumatic events and they end up going to like a life coach, and they wonder why it's not working. Because you're going to the wrong person to actually get help. So that's what therapy is specifically for when you're talking about dealing with trauma. Now, what is trauma, right? Trauma can be explained as an event that either had an emotional and or psychological impact on you, and now it's causing you to have functional impairments, which means it's hard for you to maneuver around certain things because you've experienced this traumatic event. Now, just because you have trauma doesn't necessarily mean you have PTSD, which PTSD is the symptoms of having the trauma, like some of those emotional and psychological aspects of trauma. So this can look like anxiety, flashbacks, it can look like depression, disassociating, nightmares, and things, all those different things that have to do with PTSD. Now, again, just because you experience a traumatic event doesn't necessarily mean that you have symptoms of PTSD. Now, what you need to do is, if you ever experience a traumatic event, to go to a professional to get properly diagnosed so that you can get the proper treatment, right? So leading up to this question of, do you have to go to therapy in order for you to heal from trauma? And surprisingly, my answer to that is no, you don't have to in order to heal. Therapy isn't the only thing you can use in order for you to heal. Now, I will say this much: going to therapy can help you in your healing journey. Now, like I said before, there's really no guarantees if you go to therapy you're going to be able to heal, but it's just like anything else. Like, you're actually going to be taking a risk, a calculated risk at that, to help better yourself. Now, again, you necessarily don't have to go to therapy to heal, but now my question, even within that response, is, why wouldn't you go to therapy if you experience a traumatic event? Not necessarily having to go to therapy to heal. It's really coming from the standpoint, if you think about physical health, right? Mental health and physical health are very parallel. They have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. So now you can think about it this way. If you got sick, right, and you've been sick for about 2 weeks, right? Is it possible for you to be healed without going to the doctor? Maybe, maybe not, right? But if you've been sick and sneezing and coughing for 2 weeks and you don't go to the doctor, you're probably running the risk of that illness actually being worse than maybe a flu or a common cold. You know what I mean? So it's just like with anything else. Why wouldn't you go to a professional and get help? You know what I mean? Why wouldn't you utilize that tool in order for you to get help, right? Now, even let's talk about a little bit more extreme circumstance, right? You could break your arm or break a bone in your body, right? Would you have to go to the doctor for it to actually heal up? Probably not, depending on what damage was done, right? But if you don't go to the doctor, you run the risk of actually having that broken bone become worse. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where you don't necessarily have to go to therapy to heal from trauma, but also too, it's going to be a therapeutic process in your healing journey either way. Just because you're not in therapy doesn't mean that you can't have therapeutic processes and therapeutic experiences. And also, depending on your therapy, you're either going to be going to therapy once a week, maybe once every other week, sometimes once a month, or sometimes maybe twice a week. And I always say as well too, if you're going to therapy less than once a month, I wouldn't consider that being therapy. That's like more of like a check-in. You know what I mean? If you're going to your therapist once every 6 weeks or once every 5 weeks, that's not therapy. You know what I mean? And sometimes therapists, they do have like, you know, a great caseload and maybe not be able to see you as frequently as you need to. So that's just another tidbit to grab from this video. If you are in therapy and you're seeing your therapist every 2 months or every 5 weeks, something like that, it's probably best to try to find somebody who is more available and actually has the time to see you more frequently. You know what I mean? Because there's so much that can happen in a month or over a month. And especially when we talk about trauma, you can't only have therapy like once a month. You know what I mean? Because there's so many levels, so much works, and so many things the therapist should be doing with you, you know, throughout the month and not just seeing you once a month. Now, if you have to tell any of your therapy, yeah, probably once a month might be a cool little situation to be in because you're trying to phase off the therapy. But just to begin, and that's how it's always been, you know, probably not. You know what I mean? So in summary, you necessarily don't need to go to a therapist to heal. You don't necessarily need to go to therapy to heal from trauma. But if you don't, you run the risk of hindering your healing process. You know what I mean? You run the risk of actually not getting the proper help that you deserve and that you need. You know? So if you don't go to therapy, you know, you can try to heal on your own, but the likelihood of you actually getting to that place of healing is going to be very slim. You know, you want to maximize your potential of getting to the point of being healed and, like, you know, healing from your trauma and understanding, you know, how to deal with your trauma when it comes up, your triggers and things of that nature. You know, sometimes doing it on your own is not going to be helpful, you know, because now you're left to your own vices. And sometimes when you try to, you know, you might watch podcasts or you might watch, you know, even this channel, and don't consider this channel as therapy. I have this in my disclaimer. Don't consider this channel as therapy because it's not. It's just give you insight. So don't be like, oh, I see a therapist and he's on YouTube. That's not how therapy works. You have to have your own therapist. You know what I mean? So you don't want to be left to your own vices like social media or following somebody or listen to podcasts. And actually, you know what? Like, I want to, you know, they might give some helpful skills. It might, you know, there might be things that you learn, but it's not going to actually fit you. You know, when you see a therapist, that specific therapist is going to help you get to your goals based on your individual needs. You know, many times when you see people on social media, they make general statements. You know, I may even myself make general statements. It's not going to be specifically for you, even though it may resonate, but it's a general statement. You know, you have to go see your own therapist. You have to be in your own therapy. You have to have your own healing journey. You know what I mean? So being left to your own vices isn't helpful. You know, even just relying strictly on therapy isn't helpful because you want to build a support system as your therapist. You know, if they understand trauma work, they understand like it's not going to just take them. It's going to take a whole community for you to heal. You know what I mean? So I hope this video was helpful. I also want to make sure you guys get the help that you deserve. I do have some resources in the description. So if you guys would like to use those resources, you guys are more than welcome to. I also have an ebook in my description, so you guys can check that out. It's completely free. The ebook is a guide to when to start therapy. It gives you a comprehensive breakdown on when is a good time to start therapy and also to how to find a therapist and book that first appointment. I appreciate y'all tapping in. Until next time, Terrence the Therapist. Y'all take care. Peace.